So thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. I will say I made a mistake on my bio. My PhD is in psychology, not domestic violence, but my dissertation is in domestic violence. Actually, it's on healing and empowerment of female domestic violence survivors. And this presentation that I'm going to give today is actually just kind of like the Reader's Digest version of my study of domestic violence and abuse survivors. So I first got interested in this because I started looking up what on abuse has not been written about or studied. And what I found was healing and empowerment utilizing social media and its therapeutic uses has not been reviewed. So that's why I chose this topic. Before I get to the results of my study, I need to do some groundwork. So I will describe some keywords, introduce each area that I'm going to discuss, including the gap in literature, which I kind of just explained a little bit, background information on each area, and I'll explain the different types of abuse and the mental health issues that arise due to the abuse. I will then describe my participants' experiences in their own words and the results of how social media groups help them in their healing and empowerment. It was really important for me that these women have their own voice heard. And so that's why I will quote them word for word. And I think it's important for all of us to hear them. So my study, there's actually 3 types of studies: quantitative, qualitative, and mixed. Quantitative is where surveys are sent out and participants answer yes or no. True or false, and then statistics are determined based on that information. They do not comment. Participants don't comment, they don't expand, they don't explain their answers, nothing. Quantitative is strictly just the yes or no, true or false answers, and then the percentages based on that. I, however, wanted a qualitative, and that's where you speak directly to the participants. And in my study, I asked semi-structured, open-ended questions that directly related to the research. I chose qualitative because I wanted DVA survivors' voices to be heard, as I expressed before. There is a third type, it's called a mixed study, where you use a little bit of both, which I really wanted more than anything because I really want to do quantitative as well, and they said no. So I did qualitative. Okay, the keywords are self-efficacy, which is belief or confidence in self to complete tasks. Self-advocacy, standing up for self. Therapeutic is relating to healing. Healing is a process of becoming healthy. And then we have empowerment, which is external and internal. Internal being psychological resiliency, whereas external is moving forward and taking care of the things that you need to do by accessing community services. So at times, self-efficacy and self-advocacy are confused as synonyms when in fact they're very different. So that's one thing I kind of wanted to express. Of course, one is a belief in self and one is standing up for self. And then at times, again, therapeutic and healing are also used as synonyms when in fact they're very different as well. So I have explained what these look like just in case you have any questions there. Let me see. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction on my study. Okay, in this, the digital age, the domestic violence and abuse have found a previously unknown medium to assist in female domestic violence and abuse survivors' therapeutic social support. This medium is social media, and it has brought healing and empowerment from domestic violence and abuse to a whole new level. As a result, social media has become not only a battleground for intimate terrorism, but a sanctuary for support toward healing and empowerment. This sanctuary of support has become an essential resource for female domestic violence and abuse survivors for their needed therapeutic social support. This type of support is a need for those who suffer from physical and mental health issues. Social media is a conduit for this support to express thoughts and concerns freely, which is cost-effective and easily accessible. It is a form of electronic communication where users create online communities such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Many women who experience domestic violence and abuse use social media groups, offering a non-directive, problem-solving approach. Such groups help individuals improve self-efficacy and empower them to overcome adversities and obstacles and increase self-confidence. A lot of work was done on social support, but not social support utilizing an online community. So that's why I chose that specifically. The background in domestic violence and abuse, though domestic violence and abuse has been occurring since biblical times from what we can see, therapeutic social support for healing and empowerment online is relatively new. Although the United States has recognized domestic violence and abuse as a problem for over 100 years, little was done until the 1970s, where it started in England. In the 1970s, women became discontent with the domestic violence and abuse laws, lack of assistance, and ignored pleas for help. In Chiswick, England, Erin Prizzy started the first home for women domestic violence victims in 1971, raising domestic violence awareness. For her raising this awareness and starting a home for victims to find refuge, she was threatened, ridiculed, and called a homewrecker, among others. Because at that time, domestic violence and abuse was considered a domestic problem and should not be discussed outside of the home. And that's why law enforcement would not get involved for a lot of years. At about the same time period, America followed suit and opened the first battered women's advocacy shelter in St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay, so the background of social media groups. Social media, again, is relatively embryonic in comparison to abuse, since abuse has been around for almost ever. The first was initiated as a test by UC Berkeley in 1973, which placed a dial-up system throughout San Francisco that were connected to a mainframe. I don't know if you're old enough to remember mainframes. I do. They were kind of interesting and actually fun when you got to use a telephone. Anyway, and they were open bulletin boards where the public could leave messages or sell and purchase items from others. Then one of the first online communities was CompuServe, arriving as early as 1980. Networking people through message boards and forums, which evolved into what is now called social media groups. And so that's why I chose that topic, because that gap was very prevalent. Okay, the participants in my study, spousal abuse was 80%, parental abuse 20%, psychological 90%, emotional 100%, verbal 100%, physical 70%, sexual 50%, and financial 60%. I would like to add one thing about psychological abuse, though it does say 90. Most of my literature and per my observation, it's psychological abuse is usually the baseline for all abuses. And an example of this would be no one just walks up to you and starts hitting you. They condition you first to accept that behavior from them. So that's the psychological part, is their conditioning. Okay, all participants are from the United States. 20% from California, 20% from Colorado, 10% from Utah, 10% from Michigan, 10% from Texas, 10% from Idaho, 10% from Tennessee, and 10% from South Carolina. So it stemmed from coast to coast in the United States. Okay, understanding abuse. Okay, domestic violence and abuse are more than physical aggression. It's a power and control issue. Physical and sexual abuse are easily recognizable by the domestic violence and abuse survivor and others. However, psychological abuse alone is not recognizable, and the prevalence is overwhelmingly high. Therefore, women do not seek help immediately. A study that I reviewed when 491 women who had experienced domestic violence were surveyed in New Zealand on help seeking. It was found that due to their fears, 82% had not contacted mental health professionals. 74% had not contacted medical professionals. 62% did not contact law enforcement. The best intervention of help seeking is somebody they know and trust, with 70% of all domestic violence and abuse victims telling a friend or a family member what was happening concerning abuse. This is why it is important to help those who don't understand abuse to understand it, so that they can recognize it and help those who may be experiencing it and not be aware of it, for sure. Okay, types of abuse are physical, where you are physically touched with hit, slap, or pushed, anything physical. Sexual abuse is sexual assaults on a partner's body, coercion, using sex to cause degradation, and psychological intimidation using sex or sexual abuse. Psychological abuse, when they condition you or mess with your head, as I say, with what is frequently called crazy making. Emotional abuse, when they ridicule the nurturing side of you, saying such things as, I was just joking, why are you being so sensitive? And they'll do a whole lot more. They'll attack all of your emotions, for sure. Verbal abuse, ridicule, demeaning comments. Third party or indirect abuse is probably the least understood, and that's where they'll use anyone around you, maybe their friends, maybe your friends, to abuse you and to use power and control over you. And sometimes when they use your friends are thinking, oh, well, I'm doing my friend a favor by helping them out, and they're not doing any favor, but they don't realize that. It's very innocent on their part. However, perpetrators will use their friends as well, and it's obvious that they know that that's a power and control issue. Okay, and the last one is financial abuse, when money is used to control the victim. Though this may seem minuscule, it's really a primary abuse method to continue torment even after the victim has left the domestic violence and abuse situation. So this one can go on for a long time, especially after they leave and they don't have a job. And then if they do get a job, the abuser will sometimes harass them at work, almost to the point where the manager will sometimes fire them. Okay. The mental health issues that stem from domestic violence and abuse are post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, increased suicidal risk, loss of self-efficacy, loss of self-esteem, emotional stress, among others. Mental health issues can be stifling to a survivor's life, interrupting not only their life and their job, but their association with others. This is why it is imperative that it is understood and addressed. It is also why survivors turn to online social support to gain and understand what they have endured. The 4 areas that I addressed in my study are social media, social support, healing, and empowerment. My study had to be specific, so I chose females were used, and also I chose females that had experienced domestic abuse, and I had to be specific on which online social support group I would use, so I used Facebook. Technology is actually a paramount piece. Many reasons that I will be discussing in the findings. Okay, social media. One of the benefits, the main benefit of the social media that the participants liked was it was 24/7. If they woke up with nightmares, they could go online and talk to someone about it. They did not have to make an appointment. They did not have to get dressed to reach out for help. They could do it in their PJs. This actually was brought up. One participant indicated she did not like in-person groups. So online and the anonymity of online was much a comfort to her. One participant found social media groups comforting and safe. She stated, and I quote, In my case, when I was seeking some sort of healing, some sort of support, I was hungry for something. I didn't know what or how, or I just remember going on my laptop and I remember just doing searches on Google. I just remember looking for help, support for women. I just remember Googling, just searching, reading, and links after links and pages after pages, after groups and Facebook groups. I just like sit in my room with my laptop. I just automatically began my Google search, which is how I began finding what ultimately helped me with my healing process and began my healing journey. My healing while utilizing online support groups was comforting and safe, unquote. So that kind of explains, you can hear her voice. She was really looking for something. She couldn't find anything. This participant in particular had been beaten so bad at one point that her face was literally unrecognizable and spent a lot of time in the hospital recovering. And it actually took her a lot of years before she could actually reach out to people, to someone for help. Okay, the benefits of social support. This is actually my favorite. Service, comfort, encouragement, and hope were all what participants indicated. Thwart stress and diminish the psychological distress was actually empirical articles. Sisterhood, resources, understanding, no judgment, value. Again, this is the voice of the participants of my study. So I just wanted to make that clear so you'd have that understanding. So social support gives comfort, encouragement, supportive, uplifting, and non-judgmental. I want you to hear their voices on this one because it's pretty interesting and it's just great. Anyway, so one participant sums it all up when she explains, when you have a DV social media group, there is no darkness or unknown, and she explains it like this, quote, "It's not quite as unknown for people who have been there. They can kind of help you see through and shed a little light because they are a few steps ahead of you, or there's a lot ahead of you. And knowing that you got people behind you, it really is impactful to be in a group of people at all different stages. And it's obviously impactful. So in so many different ways, it's not so dark when you know you had got somebody a little bit ahead of you and a little bit behind you," unquote. So her last comment was one that was most amazing, that it was expressed just phenomenal in my book. She was saying that when she is online, she finds people a little bit ahead of her to help her in her journey, and they reach out to her, and she finds people a little bit behind her in their journey, healing journey, and she reaches out to them. And I'll explain a little bit more about that under healing and how that actually played a big part. Okay, another person on social support, one participant stated they basically were just somebody, quote, I should say quotation marks, they basically were just somebody I could go and talk to, which at the beginning I needed somebody neutral because my family was just so sick of hearing it. There was actually several of my participants that indicated that parents and family and friends were sometimes not the people to go to because they didn't have the experience and they didn't understand what she was going through. So it was very difficult for them to talk to family and friends. Let's see, another participant stated, quote, "because you feel that connection, because part of this is isolation and feeling like you're alone and you have nobody to talk to that understands what you're dealing with." This participant described, and that's unquote right there. This participant describes the connection she felt towards other DVA females who had similar experiences, and that not only is why she used social media groups, but it helped her in her healing. Another participant stated, and I quote, "I think it's just the comfort of knowing you're not alone. I think there's other people who are going through the same, dealing with the same path or similar things. At least I've been able to find some people with some similar stories that have helped, unquote. Not being alone and sharing stories was what all participants described as to why social media groups were helpful in their healing journey. Another participant stated, quote, "They're very supportive and uplifting because they've been there and they know what it's like," unquote. Most participants found social media groups supportive and uplifting, though I did have one participant indicate that this is not always the case and to be careful when first joining a group. Another participant stated, and I quote, "Well, just the comfort, the overall support, just by somebody saying, hey, I feel the same way," or "Hey, we went through some similar things," or "Hey, I also feel that way," or "I also was hurting myself that way," or "I was also hurting." That's therapeutic. That's help. That's support, unquote. Again, social media was a comfort and a support, and she found this to be therapeutic to her. This same participant later stated that that her online group is her family and her sisters, and she calls it her sisterhood. Another participant, just through being, quote, "just through being encouraging and non-judgmental for accepting me and my story, and the fact that I didn't just pull it out of nowhere, just being supportive, some saying things like, you got this, we're here for you, and we understand all of that," helped a lot, unquote. This participant found her group to be encouraging and non-judgmental. The importance to most all participants was non-judgmental. I will also add that this last person, she went to her group and she goes, "Okay, so my ex is not a narcissist because he was tested, and he tells me he's not a narcissist." And her group, after describing him in detail, her group is like, "Okay, yeah, he is a narcissist, but no, he can't be," she said, "because he was tested and everything else." So it was actually kind of funny. She thought it was hilarious. She's like, "I can't believe I totally believed he wasn't a narcissist." And she goes, "He had all the markings of a narcissist." So I thought that was interesting. Her group was very helpful as well. Okay, healing. So service. Given and received. This is one of my aha moments, actually. 100% discussed service to each other, described reciprocally in two ways. Now, I will say this. I kind of use service and support interchangeably. So their support was service, correct? Okay, so first, how do you feel when you serve others? You feel good, right? You feel the warm fuzzies, you feel good inside. Some call it the release of dopamine, whatever you want to call it. You have this really good feeling. And how do you feel when you are served? You have, again, a really good feeling, the warm fuzzies, whatever you want to call it. So that is how it was reciprocal in one way. So it's reciprocal as when I serve you or when I'm supporting you, I feel good. When I'm getting support or service, I'm feeling good. So that's how it's reciprocal in that way. So the next way that it was reciprocal, that I found very interesting, I started when I observed and analyzed the work, was people who serve feel almost obligated. People who are served or supported almost feel obligated to serve others. And it was literally 100% who indicated that they wanted to help other people after they had been helped. They want to reach out to those people that aren't as far in their journey as they are. And so I found this very interesting. I had never noticed it before when I was on different groups and so forth, but it was very, very paramount and very obvious in my study. I was pretty impressed. Okay, so another person or participant stated, and I quote, "Whatever I can do to help other people, even if it's just sharing experiences, I like to do that because, like I say, it gives purpose to your pain," unquote. It should be noted that service and support had the single greatest impact on participants' healing and empowerment It was discussed and described by every single participant over and over. It was the highest by a large margin. I couldn't even tally it. It was so frequent. Okay. And then the second one, they understand and give hope. So understanding and hope helps in the healing process. First, you find out you are not crazy and other people have endured the same thing that they understand, and they understand you. Second, when you see that others have made it through the aftermath of abuse, it gives you hope as well. And so being understood and receiving hope because you see how they've been successful, that seemed to have been great, helped in the healing process for sure. One participant stated, and I quote, "For people that are further along than me, that gives you hope, and people that are not as far as you feel like I can give them hope. We all kind of help each other because everybody's at a different place in our journey," unquote. The journey of healing is the goal. The helping each other through in whatever way we can is the method, by encouragement, giving hope, understanding, which is all wrapped up in the support or service of each other. Okay, empowerment. This one actually had some major aha moments in it as well. Though empowerment is moving forward and is an action word, right? Sometimes empowerment starts out very small, such as just being able to talk about what happened to you and your story. Remember, I was talking about that one sister that she was so badly beaten up that you couldn't even recognize her. It took her at least 3 years to share her story. It might have been a little bit longer, but I think she told me about 3 years. It took forever because she felt so much shame and so much embarrassment. She couldn't share it. But I wanted to hear the voices of a few participants about sharing their story and what it did for them. So one participant, and I quote, "It helps me feel more confident in sharing my story," unquote. Another participant, "It's fulfilling because it's an overall kind of cycle that it was a struggle and journey for me, first of all, to start sharing my story and speak up and open up and have my truth be heard," unquote. And this is the participant I was talking about that was so badly beaten up. This participant later explained that her PTSD was so bad, it took her several years to share her story, like I explained before. Another participant stated, quote, "Online support groups gave me an opportunity to share my story with strangers so that I could get feedback. In the beginning, it was so I could get feedback to make sure that what I was experiencing was actually not normal. And then when it wasn't normal, it gave me the opportunity to talk about my feelings and what I was going through with people who didn't know me. And so I didn't have that feeling of non-judgment or being afraid of that I would be judged," unquote. So a lot of times it's not uncommon for victims or survivors to think people just are abusive. They're just abusive. And so when you explain that that's not normal behavior, then they're like, "Oh wait, aha moment for them. That's not normal. Okay, good, because I didn't think that was normal, but that's just how I've been treated. So I thought that was just how people are supposed to treat me." Anyway, so I have another participant who stated, quote, "But my mission was to help others, and I ultimately think I have achieved that, was just by saying encouraging words to others, by sharing my story, or when I heard something or see something." So see how significant that sharing their story is. It's the first part really of empowering this person and helping them move forward in their journey. As these participants described, sharing their story was so empowering to them. It was one key that helped them move forward in their healing journey. I want to discuss number 2. Faith has had a significant impact. Though 50% discussed how God played a part in their life, in their empowerment, what I found was that 50%, after analyzing the data, had received empowerment at a much faster rate than those who didn't discuss faith or God in their life. So I thought that was quite an aha moment for me, because I didn't, number one, I didn't have any questions about God or faith, so I didn't think it would come up. And then when it did, and then I noticed it was not uncommon, I started analyzing what was the difference between the people who did and the people who didn't mention faith or God in their life. Okay, so the 4 areas addressed, social media, social support, healing, and empowerment, are you starting to see how these 4 areas work together for the betterment of domestic violence and abuse victims and survivors? I mean, they totally collaborate. They work so well together. Social media is the conduit for social support, which helps in the healing of these women so they can move forward in their life and be successful. And I think social media, the part that women really liked is the anonymity, the 24/7, of course, and also they could access it anytime. It wasn't something they had to make an appointment. And one thing about domestic violence and abuse survivors, sometimes we just have that crisis where we need to take care of something right now. We need to talk to someone right now. And making an appointment could ultimately end up bad for the survivor if they don't make it to that appointment because of whatever crisis, how deep that crisis may be. Could go into despair, which could then result in suicide. Okay, the subcategories, and I'm going to share with you, these were the main words that were used throughout my whole entire dissertation. Comfort, relief, hope, support, not alone, family and friends, understand, supportive, similar experiences, peace, sharing their story, encouragement, calm, faith and religion, reassuring, accessibility, judgment, or non-judgment, shall we say, and value. I will say family and friends was sometimes, at least by 3 participants, I don't think more than that. Family and friends were not the people to go to. So though family and friends was on here and it was mentioned by every single participant, it wasn't always in a positive light. Families and friends sometimes don't understand why they don't leave, like now. They don't get it. So it was very helpful for the online support groups to explain to them, hey, these people aren't going to get it. They've never experienced it. They're not going to be able to be of help, but I'm here for you. I thought that was phenomenal. Okay, I had 2 foundational theories. Maslow's hierarchy of needs was one of my baselines of my foundational theory. I love Maslow because he kind of maps out everything that an abuse survivor kind of needs. When women first leave a domestic violence and abuse situation, they're frozen or stuck. And that's how it was described by a few of my participants. They're frozen or stuck. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to proceed. So this is where kind of the empowerment comes. They don't even want to proceed, really. So they need to be helped or reassured. And the first place to start is physiological needs. They need to be able to eat, to have a roof over their head. This is a paramount step. They need to be able to take care of themselves, right? Then they need to find safety. They need to feel safe, secure. Unlike when they were in their domestic violence and abuse situation, they did not feel safe or secure. They need to feel loved or feel like they belong or of value. Then they need to work on their self-esteem. And as they do all these things, they can work on themselves as in a deeper level. Maslow calls that self-actualization. I call that empowerment and moving towards a more empowered individual. And so physiological safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, all works towards the betterment of each domestic violence and abuse survivor. This is a great pattern for those who have gone through domestic abuse. I will say one story, and it was only one story. I was just in shock. She did relate that her social media support group actually found her got her out of her domestic violence situation. They got her a job. They got her out of the state. They got her a house. They got her kids a place to live, clothes, everything that she needed, and away from her abuser. Then they lined up people to go to court with her, and I mean, this social support group, I don't know what one it was, but I really should ask, because they were totally on top of it. They took care of this girl like no other. I've never seen anything like it before. But they got her a house, they got her food, they got her a job, they got her kids and her out of the state and into another state. And she's flourishing actually now. She was able to, she had enough confidence to go up against her abuser, which most, a lot of, I won't say most, but a lot of domestic violence and abuse survivors struggle with. And they had someone go with her, and they took care of her very, very well. So that social support group was, in my book, probably the best I've ever heard of. Absolutely. Okay, 100% believed healing and empowerment work together. So I did ask them, do you think healing is first? Do you think empowerment is first? How do you think they work together? Though they said 60% said absolutely straight across the board together. 20% said empowerment a little bit before healing, and 20% said a little bit of healing before empowerment, but pretty much both of them work together simultaneously. So that was kind of one of those questions I thought was actually very interesting. Okay, the types of therapy is talk therapy, social support, art, equestrian, journaling, animal, exercise, adventure. And this barely just touches the surface. There's so many other types of therapy, right? But this is, I did ask a question in my, as one of my empowerment areas. And I said, so do you think talk therapy is more important than social support, or is social support more important to talk therapy? Which one do you think was most advantageous to your healing and empowerment? And 100% said they're absolutely equal. I need social support and I need talk therapy. And some, I did have a couple who said, I don't even need talk therapy. I just go to my social support, which is great. But most all of them felt that a therapist was needed, and also their social support was paramount. It was, they had to have it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So social support is as important and helps them to gain the empowerment and the healing that they need just as much as talk therapy, which is a therapist, right? I will say I have a ton of friends that are therapists because I run around with that community, and they are absolutely amazing. They use different techniques that their social support groups can't, such as EMDR, CBT, DBT, and many others. But they do have their place, and they are needed when healing is in the process, right? Again, a lot of them really thought that going to their social support therapeutic for therapeutic purposes in their PJs was very important. And not making an appointment, like if they woke up with night terrors, which happens a lot with domestic violence and abuse survivors. And that's actually quite a blessing when you can have someone there 24/7. Okay, resiliency is the ability to bounce back. Healing and empowerment, utilizing therapeutic social support, develops that resiliency in domestic violence and abuse survivors. I think you'll find that as people use social support or online social support, because it is so available, that the resiliency for having, such as your PTSD, I think diminishes a little bit faster when they have support to say, hey, what's going on with me? And people explain, hey, that's normal. You're going to go through this is what happened to me. This is how I handled it. So that's why the resiliency is, I think, pretty high in the social support realm. Okay, so social media groups, to sum it up, social media support groups in specific areas of domestic violence and abuse is therapeutic. It builds resiliency, builds relationships that last a very long time, and is healing, builds empowerment and survivors. Everyone that I've met in social support groups that I've become close with. I have as still major friends. It's been several years. And this is what I will also say about that. At times when I am helping other people, such as I had a young woman who is being very badly abused in Oregon. I am in California right now, and she contacted me and I said, let me see what I can do to help you out. And I contacted a girl in Oregon and I said, I have this girl that needs to be out of her situation. Can you give me, now she's in, the one with problems was in Southern Oregon. The one I was talking to was in Northern Oregon. The one that was having the problems wanted to go to Northern Oregon. So I contacted this girl in Northern Oregon, if I made a lot of sense. And she gave me the names and the phone numbers of the communities to contact in the northern part of Oregon. So this woman contacted those people and was out in a matter of days. So that was very helpful. Sometimes just building a network of people and knowing where they're at to help them get out of their situation or help them get jobs, help them find places to live. And that was the part that she needed, was she needed help, a place to live. So that was found for her by a domestic violence and abuse group in Northern Oregon. So it was very helpful for her. Okay, in closing, my favorite comment out of all of my people is, it's not so dark when you know you got somebody a little bit ahead of you and you got and a little bit behind you. So we reach out to those, or people reach out to us that are ahead of us, and those who are behind, we reach out to them to strengthen them. I love that. And I love the other comment, it gives purpose to our pain to help others. Okay, in conclusion, social media domestic violence and abuse groups are significant in the lives of female domestic violence and abuse survivors. Female domestic violence and abuse survivors search for therapeutic strategies for their healing and empowerment. Social support will bring about healing and empowerment. Online social support of female domestic violence groups is paramount due to the benefits of accessibility and the social support it provides. As female domestic violence survivors build their healing and empowerment, they become more resilient. Now, I used a boatload of references when I wrote this. So here is some of the main references. I do have more. If there's anyone who would like a copy of my dissertation, just email me. I'll have my email on the next slide. I will say a dissertation is kind of boring. I go to the results page when I have to read one because I want to know what was used, how it was used, and what the results were. But if you'd like to read it, you're more than welcome to contact me, and I don't mind sending it to you. I am in the process of publishing it as an empirical article, though it is already published in its entirety. Okay, well, I want to thank you again for having me, and I really appreciated the opportunity to share a little bit about my dissertation and the participants.